Great. So without further ado, let's launch into the panel. We have a really great group of panelists here today. And if the three of you could please introduce yourselves, maybe let's start with Chelsey and then go to Brandon and Amelia by sharing your names and your pronouns, your CLA majors and minors, along with where you work and your current position.
Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Chelsey Lowe. My pronouns are she, her. I was a double major in political science and geography and urban studies, and I'm currently a program officer at the William Penn Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Trush. I go by he, him pronouns. I was an English major at Temple. I graduated in 2020, but currently I work as a media coordinator with AMP agency based in Boston.
Great. And Amelia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Pikovsky. My pronouns are she, hers. What else am I supposed to say? I forgot.
Your current role and where you work.
Okay, so my major was psychology. I also minored in English and got my creative writing certificate, which I highly recommend. And I graduated in 2015. And then my current role, I work at the College of Engineering at Temple University, and I work as a major gift officer. Thank you for having me, by the way.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I think we'll start into the first question, go into the first question, which is basically just walking us through your career journey, whoever wants to go first. And basically, can you share whether or not you always knew that this thing you're doing now is what you always, would be doing, or did you have other ideas or plans as an undergrad? Kind of walk us through how you first learned of and entered your current career field, whoever wants to go first.
I can jump in. So no, I didn't think I would be in this position. I think when I was at Temple, I was very
Oh no, is Chelsey frozen for everyone else? Okay, it seems like we're experiencing some technical difficulties. I also know that Chelsea's in South Africa right now, so there's quite a distance happening. But maybe I will pass it over to Amelia since you're unmuting yourself, and then we'll see if Chelsey comes back.
Okay, great. Yes, I hope she does, because I want to know all about what she was about to say. I'm on the edge of my seat. So like Chelsey, I too had no idea that I would be working as a major gift officer, but I did always have high hopes that I would find my way back into an academic institution, specifically Temple, because it's my school and I love Temple. Gave me an opportunity when no one else would, and I think a lot of our current students and alumni probably feel similarly, which is why we love it so much. Initially, I learned about the role of a major gift officer at a party, which is kind of funny. Somebody that I knew and was talking to worked in development. And basically, the way it was presented to me at this party was that this person said, oh, I basically just go to events and talk to people about how great this university is. And, we have various events, we get to meet with alumni, and we get to meet all kinds of people that are in all different walks of their career in all different places. And we get to show them what it means to have an impact, a real impact, and how to give back to an institution that gave to them, kind of help them get to their place of success. And I said, wait, this is just volunteering? And my friend said, no, this is a career. I said, wait, they would pay me to talk about how great Temple is? I do that every day. So what I did was, I have already had my degree. I was working in a field that I had kind of been in throughout college because I worked through school. I'm sure most of you, or at least some of you, work right now. So I looked on Temple's website to see if there were any positions for major gifts or something similar within the development world. I had already a background in sales, so it made it easier for me to kind of put those things together, even though it's a different model, it's a different industry. And I applied and I got an interview. I got lucky. They wanted a Temple alum and I wanted so bad to work there. So that's kind of how I ended up here. but I did always kind of know that I wanted to find my way back into an institution, and find ways to use my degree in writing and in English as well as in psychology. And I do that every day. I mean, I work with people. I'm always talking. I'm always writing. So I hope that answers the question.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'd also pass it to Brandon as well. How did you find out about your current field? Was it something you always knew you wanted to go into, or did you kind of, similar to Amelia, discover it through another means?
Yeah, I'm going to echo the same sentiments. I had no idea I'd end up in my current role. I didn't even know my current role existed. I originally was going to Temple for secondary ed and history, but I shifted over to English and was looking into internship opportunities, and I actually found an internship through Handshake for a PR agency based in Philadelphia. It was a little boutique one called Divine and Partners. And from there, I ended up going into a media planning internship with Tierney, which is another agency based in Philadelphia. And basically what I did was, it was called an externship, where they kind of gave you a taste of everything that goes into an integrated agency. And they brought up media planning, which is, it's kind of like a blend of like PR in a way, but also like you're doing a little bit of the analytics. It kind of pulls everything together, and I really enjoyed that. And so when I switched my major to English, I noticed that a lot of these roles require you to be able to distill a lot of really complicated information into like easier to understand terms. And that was a skill that I learned a lot through being an English major, is being able to communicate ideas and these complicated things effectively. So I found that I was able to transfer those skills into this role, and I really enjoy it. So that's where I'm at now. And it's funny because it's kind of like a job that people that go to the Fox School of Business would typically transition into, is what I've heard. But here I am as a liberal arts major, and I love it. So.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's really great how both of you, and I've had this experience too, and know so many alumni myself who have had this, where you don't really know about something, but you kind of find it through doing internships, through other opportunities that come your way. So for both of you, I also have an eye out for Chelsey. I'm really hoping she comes back because I too was on the edge of my seat and was wondering what she was going to say. But until she comes back, I'll just keep going with these questions. And as a reminder to students who may have joined within the last few minutes, please feel free to introduce yourselves. And if you come up with questions as we're talking, you're welcome to put them in the chat, but we'll also have dedicated time for Q&A at the end. So for both of you, in terms of your current role, because, as you mentioned too, a lot of times we don't necessarily know about these jobs that exist until we are somehow introduced to them. So can you share with everyone who's with us today, basically what a day in your work life is like? So for example, Brandon, if you think about your media coordinator and freelance journalism roles, like how would you describe a work day in your life, and what is that like for people?
Yeah, so something that I was really looking for when I graduated college, especially trying to balance some writing on the side, was a like 9 to 5 staple Monday through Friday kind of career, and that's what I get through media planning. I start my day. It's fully remote job, even though the company's based out of Boston. I work from Philadelphia, live in Philadelphia. I never have to go into the office, which is great. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And my day to day is 9 to 5. I take a lunch for an hour. And if I have time, sometimes the workload is really heavy, sometimes it's not. If I have time throughout the day, I'll try and get some writing in at the same time. That's another great thing about the career that I have right now is, so I do freelance writing on the side. I write for a couple websites. It's a good side income, and it also kind of fulfills my passion. And so, when I have a slow work day, if things are crazy at the agency, then I can take an hour and just do some writing. And if not, then when the workday wraps up at 5, maybe I'll work into the night a little bit. But I feel like I have a lot of flexibility and balance with the career that I have, which is surprising because you wouldn't think that with the type of job that I have. It's a fully integrated agency. We work with national brands. We do a lot of national campaigns. But I think in the world after COVID, a lot of these jobs do have this flexibility factor now and this remote factor. So I don't think you have to be like an executive or get to these executive roles to have that kind of flexibility anymore. I think you can kind of get that with, job positions at all levels now. So that's something I really encourage everyone to look into if they can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I see Chelsey is back with us now. Chelsey, can you hear me? Oh no, I think she might be frozen again. Okay. The suspense, it might continue, unfortunately. But hopefully we will be able to hear from Chelsey soon. Amelia, I would then ask you the same question, what is kind of a day in your life like? Like, how would you describe your work to people who might not be familiar?
Yes. So I want to stress a couple of things about working as a major gift officer at Temple University. We'll say post-ish pandemic, because like we're still in it. It's extremely flexible. Currently, I go into the office roughly twice a week. The other days are spent working remotely and or going to meetings to meet with alumni, some faculty, maybe friends, doesn't have to be alumni, but anybody who's interested in maybe re-engaging or getting more engaged with the College of Engineering. So that could mean they're interested in volunteering, being a panelist, like how we are right now, becoming a judge for our senior design projects, or just simply learning about what's going on in college and how they can offer support through philanthropy, through giving, establishing a scholarship. I'm hoping some of the students who are with us today are scholarship recipients. So kind of what I do is that a lot of my time is spent between meeting with new people, establishing those new relationships, kind of continuing to cultivate existing relationships. And then a lot of it is discovery work, which is a fancy way of kind of saying like cold calling. So I'm going through LinkedIn, I'm going through a list that I have of alumni, and I'm calling them and I'm seeing if they're interested in re-engaging. So they haven't heard from me, or they haven't heard from Temple maybe in 30, 40 years or 10 years. And it's just about me trying to gauge their interest. So yeah, my days are extremely versatile in that way. Some days I have 3 meetings. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which is pretty awesome because I get 3 free amazing meals. And I get to, chat with really interesting people. Other days are, I don't want to say boring, but a little bit more quiet. And, I'm doing a lot of follow-up work, or I have to do a lot of data entry, which I absolutely hate. But the reward is how flexible it is. So like Brandon, I get to do some writing on the side when there's, some room in my schedule, or if I want to take a course, I can. It's not a problem. It's a great collaborative environment, but they also foster a real sense of independence because you're able to really work on your own while working with your other development people. So people who are also fundraising, you can get advice from them on how to do your job better, and also with faculty. So the dean, I work very closely with him, and our department chairs and so on. So yeah, those are my days. Sometimes also I want to add, we have big events. So homecoming, we work it. Different football games, I'll be at the game this Saturday. Hopefully some of our most enthusiastic alumni will be there to kind of join in the fun. So yeah, that's my day. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm hearing a couple of common threads between your 2 responses, one being the flexibility, how that has really grown. And it's something that a lot of people now, because it's much more widespread, they're prioritizing, right? And I know for students who are looking for jobs, maybe they're seniors, and kind of thinking about what's important to them in a role, flexibility and having the freedom to maybe work remotely or work on a hybrid basis is really important. And then the second one being, the variation between your days, how no 2 days are alike. And in some ways that's a really good thing, right? Because we don't want to be doing the same things day in and day out. So just wanted to highlight those 2 points there. Moving on, and you already kind of touched on this in some of your previous responses, but I would love to dig a little bit deeper into how you think your time at Temple influenced your trajectory. And for students maybe who, still want to take advantage of our resources, want to look for those internships or those opportunities and connections, what were some of the resources or, jobs, positions, other Temple things that were key to your success post-graduation?
I can jump in here. I feel like I have a lot here. Something that really helped me out a lot was I don't know what the course number is anymore. I don't even know I hope it still exists, was the internship course. I think it was offered through the English department, or it was just like a general elective. But I would definitely recommend taking advantage of that in a lot of ways that you wouldn't even think of. So I started freelance writing when I was still in college, and I would just write little articles for certain websites. And I noticed that it was kind of having to do with what I wanted to do when I graduated. So I asked the department head, I think, if I could use that freelance writing as like technically as like an internship for that course. And so for one semester, I really was able to go all in with my writing, and that counted as a credit. I think it was like 3 credits I got for that course. Even though it wasn't a formal internship, they still counted that as an internship because it was like, it had to do with my degree. So I would definitely recommend looking into that if you can. And also Handshake. I'll be the first to say I used to hate like LinkedIn and websites like LinkedIn and Handshake. I felt like I would always apply for things and never hear back, and it just felt like a waste of time. But I will say I went really hard with Handshake this one semester, and that's when I got my internship with Divine and Partners, and that opened up so many doors for me that I would not have. And I actually feel like Handshake's interface is a little bit more friendly than LinkedIn. I think that's a great resource on Temple's part. I feel like I had a lot of people reach out to me on Handshake more than I would LinkedIn. So if you have tried Handshake and you found that you don't like it, like maybe just trying to approach it from a different angle. But I found my internship through that, and that was a fully remote paid internship that I got, and I got credit for that one too. It was another course that I got credit for. So definitely take advantage of, getting those credits where you can, even if it doesn't seem like it would work formally, like it's not a formal internship or whatever. Talk to your department head or a professor that you know, and see if you can get credit for those things, because it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You get the credit and then you get the professional experience, and then that could open up even more doors for you.
I'm so happy you brought this up because we very much do offer for credit internships, and our colleague Carissa, who I believe is on the call, is the person to talk to about that. So hey, Carissa. So not to put Carissa on the spot, but you can all definitely reach out to her. Carissa, if you could share your contact info in the chat and how people can talk to you about those, that would be great. Also, Chelsey is back. This is great. So Amelia, I do want to circle back with you about this question as well. But Chelsey, I would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe I can kind of combine the first couple of questions about your career journey, how you kind of discovered the work you're doing now, as well as a day in your work life. So for folks who don't really know about social impact consulting or the kind of work you're doing in your quote unquote day job, what is that like? And just kind of walking us through that.
Sure. And so sorry for all the tech issues. I'm actually currently in Johannesburg, South Africa, and we have scheduled power outages. So it took a bit for the solar to come back on. So fingers crossed I can stay with you all. But yes, so I actually started my career journey doing 2 AmeriCorps Vista programs, which I really think helped me define kind of like the focus for my career, because they were both project-based roles. And in thinking about my career, it set me up to really think about, okay, how can I come in, either expand a program that already exists, create a program, or create a new program for someone. So I've always had that mentality of capacity building. So I'm coming in here to make an impact. And then they're both 1-year programs. So I had to think in, how can I make an impact in a short amount of time? So I think that really set me up. But originally I thought I wanted to be an executive director of a nonprofit. It was very much when I was studying geography and urban studies at Temple, was interested in affordable housing. That was a big focus of mine, but ended up working in a number of different nonprofits, and more so in the social entrepreneurship space. So social enterprises, so for-profit businesses that also give back or have a social-based mission. And from that, kind of got a great understanding of different nonprofits and different sizes. And now on the other side of the coin, so instead of asking for fundraising for the nonprofits, I'm with a foundation that provides funding for different nonprofits. And one of the focus areas is actually small business development and then workforce development. So that's kind of the pathway. So I've had a number of different roles and in short periods of time. So one piece of advice I would give you all is don't be afraid to leave a job if you haven't been there for that long. Like I've been at jobs for a year and I was able to achieve enough, like for myself, but also for the organization, and move on to something else. So I have a lot of interests. So you also see, like, if you look at my LinkedIn or my resume, I kind of have bopped around a lot, and that hasn't been a hindrance to me, even though I know a lot of career professionals will tell you stay focused and stay in your lane. So that would just be some feedback. And then was there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
No, I think that was great. And it did a good job of answering the question. I think in terms of, I know it's hard to say because now like you clearly are, abroad and you're doing a lot of different things. But if you had to distill maybe like an average day in your life, just sort of with your role, how would you describe that to folks who are curious?
Sure. So like I mentioned, I'm focused for William Penn on their Regional Resilience Fund, which is focused around economic development, be it in organizations that create jobs. So they are doing like workforce development, small business development, and then some that are about civic infrastructure. So looking at some housing and some like food systems. So if you think about food pantries in that space. So a lot of my work is talking with potential grantees, doing research in those areas, reading proposals that the grantees send in, and then writing shorter proposals that are then submitted to the board of the foundation for approval for funding. So that's kind of like the task that I do on a day-to-day basis. But it is nice because I'm 6 hours ahead of you all. I get to spend my mornings to myself and sleep in, and then I do my work kind of like in the afternoons and late nights.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And another common thread, in addition to the flexibility, I think is the writing. All of you have mentioned in different capacities, you do a lot of writing, and that is definitely one skill, right? As liberal arts majors, we have a lot of practice in, and it definitely applies to a lot of different fields. So great. With this question now, kind of thinking about how your time at Temple influenced your trajectory, Chelsey, I will give you a couple of minutes to think about that, how maybe there were resources, jobs, internships, or connections that were really key to your post-graduation success. But now I'd love to pass it on to Amelia for her thoughts on that question.
So I don't know if you guys have heard the statistic, and don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure it's that 1 of every 7 college graduates in this area, in like the Northeast, is like a Temple University grad. So that tells you a lot about how popular Temple is. And I feel like A, my pride, B, kind of being open about being a Temple University alum has really helped me. I learned about development, as I said, I had learned at a party, but that person, while they weren't working in development at Temple, they were a Temple alum themselves. So Temple people, we have grit. We work really hard, and we're always lending a helping hand. I think it's like that Philadelphia kind of culture anyway. We're a bit rowdy, but we're always willing to help. So don't be afraid to share with people. I always felt like my time at Temple, if I ever needed anything, as long as I asked, there were so many people that would just stand up and help me, whether it was getting an internship. I had gone up to my professor and said, look, I really want an internship in psychology. Like I need it. I work. Can we find something for me? And we did. We found an internship at an elementary school. It's totally different from what I'm doing now. But if you can work with kids, and specifically kids that have impulse control issues, it can really set you up for success when you're dealing with all kinds of people in the world. And trust me, it has. So yeah, I think that all the connections along the way, professors that I still keep in touch with that have given me encouragement, friends that I meet at Temple, just anyone through my classes or just my time there really helped to influence my confidence as well, and my ability to ask and advocate for myself. And, your professors are there for you too. They love the work that they do. They're so passionate about it. So not only are they interested in teaching you the coursework and the material, but they want to see you succeed. So I cannot stress that enough. Ask for help. Even if you're feeling shy about it, even if you think you might be a burden or you don't want to bother them, send an email. 9 out of 10 people will help you. Maybe that one person, they don't, but it's a blessing in disguise. So yeah, I would say that how I got to where I am today, it's just been one Temple person helping me after the next, and it still continues. So yeah.
Yes, the Temple pride and the Philly pride, for those of you who are watching the World Series, is very real. So just want to reiterate that. And then Chelsey, what do you have any thoughts that you want to share on this in terms of Temple and advice for students?
Yeah, I completely agree. Even my the current executive director at the William Penn Foundation is a Temple alum. So I've seen that in most of all of, yeah, there's always been at least a coworker everywhere that I've worked in Philadelphia that I was able to connect with. But I would say a past project that I was working on was actually with Independence Blue Cross. So I worked with them on a millennial health challenge, and it was very interesting. One of the communications firm that we hired were actually full of Temple alums. They were founded by a Temple alum. And one of the people who I was working with on that project for the Well City Challenge was actually someone who I was friends with when I was at Temple, and we had both been a part of the Wellness Resource Center. So it was just like such a full circle moment to had learned about mental health and wellness while we were at Temple, and then we were working on a campaign, and this was during 2020, focused on mental health. So that was a real full circle moment for me, and like a Temple pride moment I wanted to highlight.
Owls are truly everywhere. That's amazing. All right, and now I just have a few more kind of specific questions for each of you, delving into your past experience and, kind of sharing a little bit more about that. And then around 12:40, I'm hoping to transition, maybe 12:45, to the open Q&A. So I want to start with Amelia, who, as you mentioned before, you did your internship in education, and then you also have a lot of experience working in sales at different organizations, and then, now working at Temple. How do you feel like these past experiences, which maybe seem like they're separate, right? I'm putting separate in quotes, help you in your current role?
Okay, I love this question. I'm so excited about it. Okay, I'm sure that all of the people who have joined have taken a humanities course. I don't know, do you guys still call it Mosaics 1 and 2?
I think it's been changed to intellectual heritage, but it's the same thing. It's
That
the exact same
was
course.
the original name. It used to be intellectual heritage, then it was changed to Mosaics, now it's going back. It's like bell bottoms or like, flare jeans. The trends just come back. Awesome. Okay. In that course, I feel like the most important thing you can learn is how to make connections between things. You're reading so many different things, from the letter from Birmingham, Martin Luther King, to, I don't know, the Bible, right? Like, you're reading so many different things, and hopefully your professors are asking you important questions and asking you to really consider the themes throughout, and kind of helping you along the way to make those connections. So I feel like I also, I was a Pure Diamond teacher. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It's basically you're assisting your instructor in that class while you're a student. I assisted a professor I had in that class. And what I learned while I was in that class was just that, but applying that to my professional life. Every single interview I go on, I talk about how the things that are so far off from the job I'm applying for, how they make me a stronger candidate. Psychology was my major. Think about how your major in psychology or political science or philosophy or English makes you a stronger candidate than somebody who's just in business, right? When you're in liberal arts, there's so much more that is coming at you across disciplines. So you have to find a way to kind of connect with that and make it personal, and see how it puts you on top. And then in addition to that, I feel like using that and then kind of allowing yourself to kind of go in the direction that life takes you, and then just giving it your all at 100%. That's what I did. And I kind of trusted in that process, that no matter where I land, I am in charge of figuring out how each opportunity and each experience will help me in the next part of my life. And you learn lessons everywhere you go, right? Like, you learn how to do something new, whether it's something as simple as how to scan some documents, right? Or how to talk somebody down who's like very upset. those skills, they will make you a stronger candidate in every position. So it's just about finding a way to kind of persuade your audience to understand that, right? It's like writing, it's everything we learn in most of our classes. And yeah, I've done that. And I think so far it's been working for me pretty well.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I love the point about how you are the one who has control over your narrative at the end of the day, right? Like you can take these seemingly disparate experiences and create that common thread for someone.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Stacey, a lot of times I get pushback when I apply. Like I've had people say, well, you were in insurance for so long, so how does this make you a good candidate? Almost questioning me as though it wouldn't. And I'm like, I had to read documents all day. Of course it makes me a good candidate. You know, the other stuff, that's easy. Or, well, you went to school for psychology. What does that have to do with, you know, raising money? So you just have to be prepared. It's like I had a professor at Temple tell us rather before writing an essay, always know your audience. Make sure you know who you're writing to. And that's how you craft a good essay. It's the same thing with interviews. It's the same thing with cover letters. It's the same thing with resumes. Is it tedious work to kind of tailor everything? Sure, but it gets easier once you get used to it.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. I want to give an opportunity, you know, Brandon and Chelsey, if either of you have points that you want to add on to this, feel free to do so when considering these questions as well, because both of you, Brandon and Chelsey, have experience in, you know, your 9 to 5, as we call it, and also a freelancing or consulting, you know, something that's not exactly a 9 to 5. And people might be wondering, what is that all about, right? Like I hear about it and it seems like it could be interesting, but I don't really know what the pros and cons are, you know, between doing these things. So Brandon, maybe I'll start with you. You know, what would you say are kinds of the pros and cons between freelancing, you know, being your own boss, doing your own writing, and your work with AMP and your full-time job?
Yeah, so the funny thing with freelancing is that I kind of stumbled into it. Like the other day I had this thought and I was like, wow, I'm an independent contractor, and I didn't even really realize it until recently. And that I found that out, like the way that I found out about freelance writing was I came across an article on the internet, and it literally was like, here's how to pitch an article to a website. Find the person, send the pitch, see if they want it, and if they want it, then you send an invoice and get paid for it. And that's literally how I started freelance writing. I did exactly that. I looked up some guides, and like I'm a big film and video game person. So I started pitching like op-eds and things about like my thoughts on video games, or I like pitched interviews, etc. And to Amelia's point, I really agree with that notion of, you know, taking charge and being your own boss, because originally when I was in college, I was like, I'm going to become a teacher. I need to get a salary job. Like that's, and not to knock on educators. I think they're amazing, but that was kind of like the safe route for me. That's what I thought. Like, I know that we need teachers, and I know that's a job that I would enjoy. I'm going to do that. And then I started opening up my mind to the idea of like these new jobs I never heard of, and also freelancing. Like I can do this side job. Like there's not a strict formal guide on how I could do freelance writing. I just kind of have to make it up all on my own. And I can take advice from people and I can read these guides on the internet. But at the end of the day, like my work ethic and the way that I approach this side hustle basically is all on me. And that's scary, and it can be scary. And it's all about advocating for yourself. You need to make sure you're getting paid for your work. You need to make sure you're not being undersold for your work. You need to make sure that, you know, you're not overwhelming yourself with too much work. But at the end of the day, there's something really fulfilling about looking back on all of the work that you've done independently, and, you know, not in a formal work setting, and being like, okay, I did all of that. Like that was all accomplished because I, you know, put my foot forward and I reached out to these people, et cetera. So going back to my original point, so I feel like I have that stability with my 9 to 5. It's my salary job, but at the same time, you know, I clock in, clock out with that job, and then I leave, and then I have, you know, as much time as I want to dedicate towards freelance writing, or as much time as I don't want to. Like I can be in charge of that, and there's something really fulfilling about that. There, again, going back to that flexibility factor, it's a really flexible way of, you know, feeling fulfilled at the end of the day. So, did I answer your question, Stacey? I feel like I kind of got off track there.
No, it definitely did. And I think your passion really comes through, like all of your passion, you know, for what you do. And I saw a couple of students smile when you said that you were interested in like video games and writing, because we often think like, oh, these things that I have an interest in, I can't make money doing that, or I can't take that seriously, but that's not true at all, right?
Yeah, and it was actually really amazing. Like last year, I had a PR person reach out to me, and they said, "Hey, we have this video game preview, but it's in San Francisco. We'll fly you out and pay for your hotel if you want to come and like review it." And I was like, "Hell yeah, of course I will." And that was just like this awesome thing. So I got paid for the article, and I got flown out to San Francisco. And it's like these things that you never would have thought, like just because I wrote some articles on the internet, now I have all these other opportunities opening up for me, like that I never would have otherwise. And I didn't really, and like, this is unfortunate. Like I didn't have like a mentor figure through a lot of it. And I would have loved to, but I just couldn't find one. So I kind of had to like lean on myself. But I would advise you, if you can find a mentor figure, you can do it. I think you can do it without one, but I do say if you can find a mentor, totally go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And Temple has some resources around this. Maybe I'll share this in the follow-up with the IEI, the institute that we have for aspiring entrepreneurs and people who are interested in this kind of thing. So yeah, this is great. Chelsey, in your experience, doing your consulting, is there anything that you would kind of add on to Brandon's points? What would you say are kinds of the pros and cons of being a consultant, compared to a 9-to-5, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what Brandon mentioned. I do want to note I worked with a lot of nonprofits before, and I worked in nonprofit, and a lot of the funding was the issue around. Okay, so we only have funding for a year for your role. So I know a lot of times people think, oh, a job is secure and you have all of this opportunity, but it's not always secure depending on the industry. So consulting kind of gave me the ability to have a little bit more flexibility. So I was going to make more money, one, because I had to account for taking out the taxes for the work that I'm doing. So I think that's another thing people don't think about. There is opportunity to actually have a higher wage. So that's a pro, but the con is, like Brandon mentioned, is like you have to go out there and make those relationships and find opportunities and also pitch yourself. So, it is getting comfortable with public speaking, getting comfortable, using your proposal writing skills or your writing skills that you're learning to pitch yourself. I do want to mention the first consulting opportunity I actually got through volunteering. So I volunteered at a conference and was able to connect with a group of women, actually an organization called Black Women Talk Tech. So they're Black women tech founders, and through like networking in person, I know we talk a lot about networking online. There still is that value to networking in person. And if you're interested in a field and it's local to you, or if it's in New York or DC, I would reach out to a conference and see like, do they need volunteers? Because that at least gets you in the room so you can hear, about the speakers, but then also network with other people. And a lot of times when you're a volunteer, they might have you in the green room. So you're like very close to, some of the high profile people who you wouldn't be able to speak with if you were just an attendee. So that's just a piece of advice there, but definitely there are pros and cons to the consulting work.
That's a really great tip. These opportunities, people often wonder, how do I even find about these things? And, putting yourself out there, going to events, going to conferences, that's a really good one. There's a question in the chat from Shakib, who I think this is a great question. In terms of defining consulting, like what, because folks might have heard of freelancing, kind of working for quote unquote yourself and working typically with other individuals or companies, but Chelsey, how would you define consulting for someone who might not be familiar?
Yeah, I can share what I did for consulting. So actually, the most recent project, I worked with an organization called the Economy League. And then, as I mentioned, our project or our funding for the project ended. So I took some time off and then reached back out to them to see if there was another way to work with them. And they didn't have like the full funding that they had before, but they had a smaller amount. So it was like, okay, well, we can't bring you on as a full-time employee, but we can bring you on as a consultant to kind of help us with other work. So that was the most recent project that I worked on. So it was similar to the work that I was doing before as a program manager. So it was kind of like helping to build out programs, running meetings with people, but I just presented myself as I work, in this space around program development in the social impact space. So their focus, as I mentioned before, was around health health disparities and focused around communities of color in Philadelphia. So consulting really can be whatever it is that you want to present. You could be a consultant that's focused on technology, a consultant who's focused on health. You could be a consultant who's focused on the entertainment space within video games. It just depends on how you want to position some of your skill sets. So it can be anything from writing to like writing proposals for people, writing actual content for different organizations. It can be facilitating meetings where for partnerships. It really is to whatever you want it to be.
Awesome. Thank you. That's very helpful. And this is actually perfect because we're very naturally segueing into the Q&A here. I see Abigail in the chat has a follow-up question. So Abigail, you're welcome to unmute yourself and share if you'd like.
Okay, awesome. This is regarding consulting. Chelsey, for someone who's a young professional or someone who recently graduated college, how would someone market themselves to kind of provide like consulting services when they're just beginning, like, like in their like early, career and being a professional?
I would yes, you're early in that, you're a recent grad, but I would take into account everything that you've done in your life to this date and think of those as years of experience too. So any internships that you did in college, anything that you did in high school that was like a leadership role, thinking about that, because I just think about public speaking and that being like the number one fear for a lot of people. So like whatever it is that your skill set is, think about the other opportunities or the other areas where you have experience in that and kind of pull that together when you're presenting. I do think it is helpful to like work for organizations, because just saying like that was my most recent path, and like working for an organization, building the relationships and then leaving and then coming back made it a lot easier. But you may be underestimating how much experience that you do have beyond just, like the formal, post-grad experiences that you have. And I also would say like a pitch deck is also very helpful if it's just like a few slides that kind of overview of the work that you do and your experiences. I think people, or at least for me, it's very helpful to have a visual aid to kind of describe what it is you do and the experience you have.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, that was a great question. Do other folks have questions? Again, please feel free to put it in the chat directly if you're more comfortable sharing that way, or if you want to just raise your hand and unmute yourself, ask your question out loud. We have some time now, so please don't be shy and ask your questions.
I did actually have one question. I was curious, in all three of your career paths, what are some of the more important qualities that you think are necessary for you to be successful coming out of college?
Can I jump in on this one?
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay. I actually have like a short list of qualities that are important. Some of them are more action oriented. It's not so much like a personality trait, but like following up. If you can learn early in your career, even as a student, to follow up, thank people, ask follow-up questions, be present while that's happening, people will remember you. Going back to LinkedIn with what Brandon said, get used to using it now. It's going to come in handy. You might meet somebody on the street, at a restaurant, it might be a professor, you add them on LinkedIn, and 7 years from now, you might need a job, a recommendation for a position, you might be hiring yourself. Maybe that professor, you want them to do something for you. You never know what the relationship will look like in the future, but having that initial connection makes it easier for yourself. Also, I would say to be bold. I think we all learn to be bold and to think critically while we're in school at Temple, specifically with the coursework and the culture. Stick to that. And also, I don't know quite how to put it, but like, don't compromise yourself, don't compromise your passions. You really can have it all. Sometimes you don't have it all at one time like you thought you might, but stick to your passions. And along the way, you might take some different detours, and that's okay. You can always circle back to like your initial plan if you'd like. So yeah, stay determined and be true to yourself.
Brandon and Chelsey, do you have anything that you want to add?
I can jump in. When you asked the question, the very first thing that I thought of was self-advocacy. And that kind of goes back to Amelia's point about like, don't compromise. I feel like self-advocacy is something that you start to learn no matter what, when you're from the very first time you get your first job. I'll never forget an early example. When I was like 18, I'd worked at the grocery store, and one of my close friends worked at the grocery store after I quit. And she mentioned that she hadn't gotten paid for like the first 3 weeks. And I had to look at her and I was like, Meg, like, you're not at that job to have fun. You need to go to your boss and say, I'm not here to have fun. I'm here to get paid. Like, you need to self-advocate so you're getting paid for your work. And she still to this day will message me and be like, Brandon, that was like a huge life lesson at that moment when you said that to me. Like, and I realized like I wasn't even considering that. I was just feeling like I had to be there to do that job. But no, like I'm there to get paid at the end of the day. And I feel like it's not even just to get paid. It's about like, you know, if you feel like your workload is too much and you're not being supported enough, you need to self-advocate for that. Or if I send out an invoice to get paid 2 months ago that still hasn't gotten paid for $500, I need to self-advocate and say, hey, I need to be paid for my work. I feel like it's a lesson that you continuously develop, and sometimes it's difficult because you don't want to overstep and, you know, seem like a jerk, and you need to make sure you're having that balance of like advocating for yourself but not being too overbearing. But I do think that naturally you start to find a sweet spot where you know how to, you know, make sure that you're not being taken advantage of, you know, that you're being set up for success. I think you start to naturally learn that. But I think the sooner that you start asking yourself that question about like, what does it mean to self-advocate, the better. I think that'll bring you a really long way.
Awesome.
I would say maintaining relationships. I think it's very easy to build relationships. You know, you'll have coworkers, you'll have supervisors at different organizations, but staying in touch is much harder than you think. And LinkedIn's a great tool for this because you'll see when people get promoted, but like just the small things of congratulating people mean a lot in keeping those connections. I recently had, I interned for a consulting firm in 2013, and I recently reached back out to them and I was like, hey, like, I just wanted to, you know, touch base. I'm not sure if you remember me. And they were like, oh yeah, of course we remember you. But like those relationships are really valuable. And you'll see them in the future. As I mentioned, especially in Philadelphia, such a, you know, like big city, but small town feel, you know, you'll see those kind of like full circle moments where you'll come back to someone you worked with before, you interacted with before. So trying to think of ways to maintain relationships, be it through LinkedIn, or if you just send emails. I have a friend who sends a yearly kind of like update letter to her network to talk about like, you know, like where she's traveled for the year, like certain work accomplishments. And it's just like a nice note to get around the holidays. So that's something to think about, is like maintaining relationships through LinkedIn. And then the other one is just curiosity. I think for me, at least in my career, in following when I was interested in a new thing and kind of like diving into that has really led me on a very interesting path. So like I was interested in technology, so I delved into that. I was interested in mental health, so I, you know, did some more work in that space. So really don't pigeonhole yourself, because the liberal arts degree really is setting you up to be to work across disciplines. So follow your curiosity. You can do multiple things at the same time or over a period of time.
Thank you.
Such a great question, and such great answers too. Does anyone else have questions? I think we have time for maybe one more before we wrap up.
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Like, what do you know now that you wish you knew during your time at the College of Liberal Arts?
Another really good one. Anyone want to jump in first?
I will, I guess. I don't know if you can relate to this, but when I was at the College of Liberal Arts, I was also working like several jobs. And I wish I knew then that I could land where I am today. Because sometimes between finals and papers and work and life, like your social life that you feel like is slowly dwindling away, it really gets overwhelming. And I wish I knew that it really gets better. And if you just stick to it, I mean, back to what Chelsey said, it's like, yes, maintaining relationships is so important. Also, like maintaining yourself and like maintaining a positive attitude, it will get better. it will get easier. Sometimes it'll get a little harder and you'll be challenged, but I wish I knew the diversity of opportunity available to me when I was a student and when I was struggling the most.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Amelia's point. I also had a bunch of jobs when I was in college. And like I said, I feel like, teaching was kind of like my fallback. Like I knew I could get I was hopeful I would get a job as a teacher. And, that was what I was striving for. But I didn't realize how all of those jobs that I had while I was in college, I had 3 jobs at one point. I was working at the AMC on Broad Street. That's like right across from campus. And it was horrible. But those jobs, as awful as they were at times, I feel like, going back to my point before, they taught me how to self-advocate a lot more. And, I feel like I take a lot of the skills I took from those crappy jobs and I've channeled them into, making me a better worker today. And also just, I wish I had known that there were so many other job opportunities out there for me at the time. Because like I said, I was so pigeonholed into thinking that teaching was what I wanted to do that I didn't consider, like, I didn't even know that my current position existed until I was about to graduate. I wish I had not explored more other opportunities, but it just opened up the idea that I could do more. And even going back to what I said before too, like the job that I have is something that people from like the Fox School of Business would do, and I'm an English major. I feel like you should give yourself some grace and kind of think like I could be doing more than what I like, the path that I'm on. Like there could be other options out there, even though you might, convince yourself that there aren't. I feel like you should kind of open your mind up to more opportunities if you can.
Yeah, I guess to Brandon's point that I guess the piece that I wish I would have known. Um, Similarly, I was like involved with different organizations, had different internships and jobs, but there is no safe path. I think a lot of times your parents or like the pressures from the economy will tell you like, oh no, this is the safe path. The person who works at Goldman Sachs, they have like the safe career path. But you see layoffs happen across every industry. So it really is just like following what you're interested in and building that skill set and building those relationships and what you want to do specifically. So I think that's one thing I wish I would have known, is that like there is no safe. So go for what you're passionate about and then also like what you're skilled at.
I wish I had heard all of those points personally when I was a student. So thank you all so much. I feel like this was really great, really inspiring. So firstly, let's give a hand to our panelists, please. A virtual hand, an emoji hand, however you want to do it. I also want to just really quickly take a picture because I often forget, and Chelsey kindly reminded me at the beginning. So if you all are able to turn your cameras on, again, just briefly, if not, that's okay, but I'd really appreciate it. And then I'll just take a quick screenshot where we're all like posed and ready, and hopefully no one is caught off guard. Also, we'll stop recording